I'm Andra Annette, and this is Nicky Cooper, and we are Echoes of Destiny. So, I usually we don't ever work off a script on any of the shows that I do. So, but I did ask Nikki what she wants to talk to because we are both nurses in our professional lives, and we do other things. She's a hypnotherapist, and or a therapist, and I am a holistic practitioner. But as nurses, I think we both disagree. We both agree that there's a lot of disconnect that's going on in the world. There's very high stress everywhere. Nikki and I were talking about burnout, not just in the healthcare center, but I think there's a lot of burnout, Nikki, as well online with everybody hyper stimulated, trying to grow a business. They feel the need to compete, and every time they feel like they may have they found their little gem, or and then something changes, AI blooms, and every time you turn on your computer, there's a new AI, a new model, a new blueprint. And I think that it's very toxic to our systems. I know that today I was very intentional about staying offline. I did my little morning posts, and I answered a few people that are there every day. And I said, if anybody else comments, then I'll get back to them later. But it was very intentional because I was working on something, and I was like in the zone. Once I get into that zone, and I'm not distracted by things online or outside things, I get things done so much more um, quickly, easily, and it's very aligned with who I am. You know what I mean? I set a goal and I say, okay, we're going to do this. So this is the time like we have, finish or not, we're going to put it away. That, I set a goal for myself, and I say, but I can only spend this much time on it today. Right. And I do that with a bunch of things like the night before I go to bed, I think of the things I want to do the next day. And in the morning, I go over them in my head and I say, okay, I'll allow this much time for this much time for this, and, this much time for this. Right. And then you got to factor in the family and the de-stressing your body and all that other stuff. So, I found that today that usually I don't always get all the things that I want to achieve done in a day, that there's usually something that I didn't get to finish, and I'll pick that up the following day. But today I hit every single goal that I wanted to hit. And the only factor that changed was I wasn't online. So that was the only thing that really changed for me, that because usually during the day, even on my lunch or whatever, I'll tune in and see what people are doing. I'll comment on some stories, show some love and stuff. And today I just didn't do it. I said, I can't do it. I got so much that I'm working on. And I find that social media can drain a lot of your day and a lot of my mood. And I'm not giving it away. Right. So, from in your opinion, because you are very empathetic, and you are very attached to that emotional self, right? And I think as nurses, we all have different things like that we hone in on, and they become like our strengths, right? So you're very in tune with what people are saying emotionally, what they really mean, right? And I'm very in tune with the body. Like I've been looking at the body for so long that how someone looks or holds themselves, I can tell if they're lying or if they're not sharing the truth, or where in their body they have the pain. Well, even if they don't know that they're guarding, it's just like things that I pick up on right away, right? Um, I was relentless at like if I was on the train, I would say, "Oh God, she's got a terrible thyroid condition. How come she's not getting like I would all these things would go on in my head. I like what even Al Roker, I was like, really? Nobody told him sooner. So even I knew that. So I was like, so that's always been my thing, and that emotional piece is just like a strong piece in you. So you
Mm.
have to be able, like, when you analyze things, and I think as nurses, because we have to think critically all the time, that's ingrained in us, right? This happens, how do I respond? So I think that even when we read people's posts and stuff, we can really see the true message in there. We can see what they're really feeling. If that person is confident about what they're writing, or if they're just putting that up to get a message out, right? And I see that there's a lot of distraction of self. Are you seeing that online?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's I think genuinely online and everywhere actually I think we're seeing that distraction from self. I s- what I have noticed and I've used myself as a case study in that is that I find I I, I don't post for one thing I don't post every day like I did a couple of years ago because it was quite exhausting to be able to sustain that. I only post a couple of times a week now, but I do find that whatever I do post about is very much linked to something that is going on with me, something that I have overcome, something that I have learned, something I have observed, something in a conversation that I've had with a patient, a client, a co-worker, a family member, Joe blogs on the street, etc. And so it's sort of sitting in my mind as this is there's some learning here. There's some really good stuff in that. And so then then it sort of percolates as an idea, and then before I know it, I've sort of gone off on a tangent and I've written something. And a lot of it is because I think if I'm thinking and feeling and having this experience, I can't be the only one that's doing that. So I think a lot of what people are posting, um, that a lot of it is coming from that place as well. So
Yeah.
I do, you kind of, it's like network marketing, isn't it? When I remember years ago getting asked to attend something, and it was very network marketing, and they said that word of mouth thing is very powerful marketing because you're always going to say, "Oh, I tried this new thing," and you're going to say it to the people that are around you. And so I often think of that as that's how we are expressing ourselves online and actually getting information out. It's kind of that lived experience, something that you've noticed, something that's been really useful for you, and you're then percolating it and then sharing that information online. Um, I've forgotten where we started with this distraction from self. Um, but I also think that there's a lot of stuff that, oh gosh, this sounds really weird. People are saying something, but they're not actually doing it. So they're saying the information, they're talking about X, Y, and Z. We need to be doing this. We need to be reducing this amount of stress, etc., etc. But they're still living it. So, and I'm probably as guilty as the next person.
That doesn't sound strange at all. I mean, you see people that are teaching stress management show up, and they look very
Uptight.
distraggled, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I would not take stress reducing classes from someone who showed up looking like the dog ate more than her homework. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I get it, but and I'm seeing a lot of that out there. I also see, like, from a health perspective, I see a lot of people, like, this abundance thing is very big. I guess
Mm.
there's a lot of people that feel lacking in their life, right? So a lot of people saying that they have the ability to get you to your true self and in one session and all this stuff, and help you show up as the person you're meant to. But they don't look like they're there. And then you have they you know what I mean? Like, they don't look like they've unpacked everything in their life, right? Because you can tell by the way they carry themselves, they're not that confident in what they're saying. And then you have these people showing up teaching health, and that don't look healthy. They look
Mm.
very stressed out and very overwhelmed, right? And especially in health, you have to be the peace. So that was a big part of why I, said, okay, what's going on with you? Um, Andre, something's got to change. I was that nurse sitting outside smoking a cigarette, hungover from the night before, and I was like, something's got to change. You know what I mean? And I was great at my job, but I didn't feel aligned at what I was doing. I felt almost hypocritical. You shouldn't
Yeah.
smoke, you shouldn't do this. And so I did that for me because I wanted to be in alignment in what I was actually teaching and stuff. But I'm sure that I would, like, if I showed up online and I'm still 300 pounds, I don't think a lot of people would want my help with weight loss or thyroid health, unless I was teaching momentum. Let's do this together, right? Or stress reducing activities and they look haggled, or, financial, someone that's teaching financial planning, but, um, you look behind them and it doesn't look like they're managing their finances well,
Mm.
right? So there has to be some congruency, in what we're saying out of our mouths. And I think that because we are so detached, we're not seeing how we present to the world, right? Uh,
Yeah.
because we are our own mirror, right? So when if you're like running into a lot of persnickety people during the day, maybe you're walking around growling, right? Um, I don't find that, but I used to be a persnickety person, right? So you do have to
That's an
change your
awesome expression. I've never heard that before.
But I was very persnickety. I would be sitting at the desk and people would be coming to me all day long. And I was doing care plans and all this stuff and MDSs, and people would be, Andra, yes, honey. And I'd get up and I'd help them and I'd get up and I'd help them, and these people would all leave at the end of the day. And I was still there because I
Mm.
had helped so many people, but I didn't have the time to focus on it. So there were times when they, Andre, yes, yeah. What do you want? You know what I mean? Because, you know, that's what I was kind of getting. I'm going to show you this once, I'm going to teach you how to put in this IV. I'm going to teach you how to put in this thing, and then you're on your own, right? Maybe I'll teach you twice, but that's it. You got to learn this. It's by, you got to put in the action. And I don't think that, online, that like you said, that people are really putting in the action in their own life, that they are detached from themselves. I don't think that people really know how to just come home and sit in quiet, that we're so used to. And like, I'm no less guilty than anybody else. I'm not pointing any fingers here, right? I have trouble sitting still and just, because I could think of a million things I have to do, and there are days when I say, you know what, I'm just not doing any of it. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch this movie and be done with it, right? So, because that's the level of importance I assigned to it at that time, right? And I
Mm.
think that we assign so much importance to things that really aren't that important, and we put those things before really taking care of ourselves, because we're just not. And I'm guilty of it too, where I'm working, right? And when it is time for me to relax, I'm like, now what do I do? I have nothing to do. Are you serious? um, so
What is
you
that?
know, yeah. What is that? How do I do nothing? Right? I'm sure there's a book I could be writing, or catch up with some friends, or so. We've gotten so used to being on that we don't know how to shut down, and it's having a really bad effect on our nervous system. It's having a really bad
Frying our nervous system.
yes, and it's having a really bad effect on our energy levels, right?
So I guess the question is, what do you feel if you do rest? Is it guilt? Is it laziness? Is it, I mean, I'm not asking you specifically, but what is it that people are, what is the feeling or emotion that's sort of behind that? Because that's a very telling thing as to what's behind those sort of beliefs. If I'm not busy, if I'm not doing something, then am I lazy? Am I is it shame? Is it guilt? Or what? Most of those things are conditioned and not something that you would have were born with.
Well,
You know,
yeah, but and for me, it's I was always a
is it
big pro.
boredom?
No, for me, when I was growing up, I mean, this is for me. I don't know what it is for everybody else. When I was growing up, I was the biggest procrastinator you ever met in your life. If we had a test and we knew for months, I would open the book an hour before the test. And I had like an eidetic memory, so that worked. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, and I would memorize it and or, but I like to read. So my idea of studying was reading the same thing again and again and again because you retain more knowledge when you read, so than you do if you're sitting there trying to memorize. If you memorize, it goes out of your head when it's done. But if you read it, you
mm.
remember it, right? So, but I was the biggest procrastinator. So in my adult life now, I feel like I'm putting off something important. And I don't even have to know what that thing that's so important is. I just feel like there's something really important I should be doing. It's almost like I forgot something.
So that for me, see how that's how my brain works is that the thing that you're shelving or not prioritizing is something that is not in your highest values. So you're not seeing the value or the worth of it. It's not sitting with you. It's something that you really truly it really resonates with you. It's something that really excites you. You feel creative when you think about it. You feel excited from that. So the things that you're putting off are usually things that are very low value. So they're probably somebody else's highest values because we're all, some people genuinely love to do some of those things. I can't think of, some of the things that I don't like doing. I can't imagine why anybody would love doing them, but that we're all so different. So if it's something that you're not prioritizing, generally it's because it doesn't light your fire, it doesn't lift you, it doesn't excite you in that respect. So the like today was your classic example of I was on fire, I was in flow because everything that you were doing was in your highest values. They were you were very highly productive, and you were doing the things that really lift you up and light you up. But if it was all of the things that you kind of, if you were to write down everything that you need to do like a to-do list, there'll be some stuff at the top of the list that you're really passionate about, and then there's stuff at the bottom you're like, yeah, meh, if I get round to it kind of thing. So if your to-do list was just full of all the stuff at the bottom of the list, you'd be like dragging yourself to it the entire day. So that's to me when I think of procrastinating, it's because you really don't want to do it. It's really not in your highest values to do those things.
Well, I mean, today I spent a lot of time writing because I'm working on a major collection that I'm doing. I know everybody thinks I'm nuts because I'm always writing, but I enjoy that, and it's
Hmm.
something that aligns with me because it's my disease
High
process.
level.
Yeah.
It's at that high level. It's very relevant and resonant with you.
Well, so this particular thing is on thyroid, and millions of people suffer from thyroid disease, right? And they're, more than half of them are undiagnosed, and um, I know that what I did today will help millions of people. Getting it in their hands is another story, right? But I was excited to talk about it, because if you spoke to me 15 years ago, so I don't know if you really know this part of my story. I always had a thyroid disease my entire life. I was very high spectrum. I had severe hyperthyroidism. I had Graves' disease as a child. And when I got hit by a car, they needed to put me on seizure medication, which didn't.
Mm.
And back then I was on Protheliocel, which they don't even give anymore. It interacted with the phenobarbital. So they just told me the thyroid disease went away. And I struggled for a lot of years. It wasn't true, you know. And then um, I have a very and I don't think it's just to me. I think it's very specific to thyroid disease. There's a lot of people that have thyroid disease that can almost feel a shift in their body.
Mm.
Um, and it's probably because they were like me as a child. They had high and then they moved into the low, right? They're both autoimmune. You just went from one spectrum to the other. And I still feel that shift in my body at certain times of the year. So part of the year,
Mm.
my diagnosis now is Hashimoto's, but part of the year I'm hyperthyroidism. So right now, when they tested me, my labs came back hyperthyroidism, but my diagnosis is Hashimoto's, right? So, and ironically enough, I have to take the medicine for Hashimoto's because I don't make those hormones, right?
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of weird that's the treatment and it's the reverse, right? But I think that there's so many women out there that feel that and they're on that cusp of changing. And so a lot of times when you go to the doctor, your labs might be very normal, even if they're checking
Mm.
all the labs. If they're doing the RT3, they're um, and for me, I always had an autoimmune, so the TPO wasn't going to really be the defining factor with me. But I said I need that test anyway. Do it anyway. They said, well, that was not really. We know you have autoimmune. I said, well, I want to know if I have this autoimmune, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I think a lot of women feel that shift, and I think they're ignored because they don't know how to explain it. Like, because part of the year I am ready to go, I can't sit still. There's a million things that I can accomplish in a day. And part of the year, I'm like, I don't know if I really need to do this. Maybe next week. It's okay. Don't worry. We have plenty of time. And it's like everything shifts in my brain and in my body. So I think that as women we have to talk about those shifts. Like for me, menopause felt like my thyroid was on the fritz. you
Mm.
know that's all it felt like, because I've been on both spectrums. So I get out of the shower, and try to dry my hair, and I'd be saturated, and I said, okay, I'm taking another shower. We're gonna let the hair dry naturally, right? But it didn't seem to last long. So when people were talking about perimenopause and menopause, and all these things and all these symptoms, um, I'm thinking probably most of them have a thyroid condition as well.
Do you
And
think, do you, sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
do you think that a lot of this is stress induced? I mean, I know that a lot of research and certainly medical trials and medical research over the years hasn't really used a lot of females in their studies because of the hormonal imbalances and the they sort of come out and I think said that a lot of women were kind of missing from a lot of those trials. But do you think a lot of it is stress induced?
Yes. I think that stress is, of course, responsible for all disease processes.
Mm.
And
So inflammation.
but it's the levels of stress. So our bodies always have a normal amount of stress in them. You'll never get rid of all the inflammation in the body. You'll never will. I mean, that's the normal fight and flight response, right? So we need that, and a little bit is healthy, but the high levels of stress, even for periods of time, even if you're under like grief, with the stress of grief, even that period of time where people are grieving has an extraordinary impact on the human body, right? And it
Hmm.
does impact the gut, and the gut and the thyroid work together. But um there's so much that, like, your gut is responsible for converting certain, hormones into their active form in your thyroid, right? So you have a lot of things that are going on that are gut related. So in the book that I'm publishing now as we speak, it talks about the connection and what areas it impacts the thyroid. And I go into leaky gut and how that impacts the thyroid, and a few other things. And I had leaky gut, so I know it impacted the thyroid. So a lot of people think that they just have a thyroid problem, but they don't. Because if you have a thyroid problem, you have a gut health issue. If you have a gut health issue, you have a thyroid problem. And unfortunately, there's the numbers of people with a thyroid disease have almost doubled post COVID because it
Hmm.
destroyed our immunity, right? So if your immunity is down, so the book is Thrive with Hashimoto's digestive. No, I don't remember what I called it. Gut immunity and something else, right? So those things are all intricate pieces of one another, right? So, um, and I talk about how to, in a nutshell, really fix your gut without all that overwhelm and the nonsense that's out there online. It's a very simple process that people complicate, of course. From my perspective, right? Um, and probably from yours because you're a nurse, right? But um, so things like that excite me. I love, because I was told you're stuck in that body and deal with it, right? And I said, maybe I like to eat too much. Maybe I was happy. Look at me, for God's sake. Do I look happy? So, um, so things like that excite me because I like figuring things out. I like solving
Hmm.
problems. Uh, I wasn't much like I wouldn't sign myself up for any extra chemistry classes, but I love mixing things up in the kitchen that I know are going to heal my body. I get excited about those things, right? So, I could have gotten very excited today just spending hours in the kitchen mixing things up and trying new recipes and stuff like that, right? And that I'll allow so much time for. And then the book, and then normal course of business day, things like that. But I do find that I can get distracted by a lot of noise in the environment, right? So I try not to feed into other people's emotions through the course of my day. Um, it's like I put up this wall, right? you know, and I tell myself that let's kryptonite and it's gonna hurt me, stay away, right? And I make a decision that thus far, no far. Like you can get to me to a point today, but any more than hi and how you doing is not going anywhere, right? Because I know that I have to stay in my zone. But it's different when I'm at work because of course I have to do my job, right? So and I can't be that wall because I have to be empathetic and compassionate to what they're experiencing at their time. So um there's a time and a place for all these different things that we experience, but at the end of the day, what I'd really like to end my message with for this is, by at the end of the day, there has to be time in the beginning of our day and the end of our day where we're taking care of ourselves. In the morning, that self-care routine, whatever that is, whether that's meditation to prepare you for what you're going to face in the day of the world, taking care of yourself, the hygiene part, maybe walking during your lunch hour, and then at the end of the day, winding down, shutting off everything, and just relaxing your mind and coming home to self is something that I've just gotten so used to doing, right?
Mm.
And I
I
sleep like
found
crazy.
um I try to be more of an observer in my own life and my surroundings, um, much more so than I ever used to. But I was walking the dog yesterday, and we must have stopped the 67th time to for him to lift up his leg and do what he does. And and I was aware of times where I have found that really irritating, and I found it quite. Uh, I want to go faster. I want to get to where the end of the walk because I've got other things to do, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And that was a very, very strong indication of where I was sort of from a stress perspective because it A annoyed me. I didn't have time for it. And you forget that it's actually his walk. He wants to stop and sniff or have a wee or whatever it is. And so now I try to be very mindful of this is 67 times I have the opportunity to stop and look at something, you know, rather than taking it as something that's annoying the heck out of me because I've got to be from A to Z, etc. Um, so I was very mindful of this is a moment to stop and take in, stop and smell the roses, etc., and just having
Mm.
that little moment. Um, because I find whenever you talk about self-care, it can be a huge trigger for people these days. It's like when you're very stressed or upset, enraged, overreacting to a stimulus, and someone says, calm down. I mean, never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down when someone's told them to calm down. And I have noticed that there is a lot of information out there about the need for self-care. And the people that I find that are really quite triggered or reactive to that are the people that need it the most. Because the fact that that stimulus, that expression, I wrote about the you are enough phenomenon yesterday because I think it's a very beautiful affirmation, but I think it's become very quite cliched and really overused. And because and so it doesn't feel real. And it's like the self-care thing, when somebody talks about self-care, if that has a little moment of a rage monster, yeah, I know, I have this really this sort of stress response to it. That in itself is a red flag. Actually, this is the one thing you do need. And what it's doing is it's putting a mirror up to you that is actually igniting a sort of where your nervous system is not doing okay. So it's all meant with good intent, but globally, for the increase in stress that we're seeing everywhere with a lot of people, um, the actual expression of self-care and taking time out and doing all of these things is actually having the reverse effect on people that are highly dysregulated. So that in itself is an enormous shift, I think, in what's going on globally, and that distraction from self, that resistance to um, what is in my highest values, working in my highest values. When you talk about the work that you're passionate about, you're illuminated because it really is what lifts you up, what excites you, very relevant. If you were to talk about something that didn't, you would be very your tone
Mundane.
would be very different and mundane and stuff like that. And so that's where that procrastination comes in. But also, that procrastination is also, for some people, that is part of their stress response. So it's like a freeze response. This is like almost like a dissociation. And so then you are very, very easily distracted too. And we live in a very fast-paced world now that is, lightning speed, full of distractions and dopamine hits, etc., etc. So you can see that if we've got a very dysregulated nervous system, we're much more susceptible to stress. We're sort of sitting in that sort of orange, ready to flare up brain. We're not in that rested brain. Um, I had a cardiology appointment 3 years ago. I had a very bad time after having had COVID and with long COVID. And so I was seeing a cardiologist, and the entire time, this is a private consultation, um, And the entire time, the cardiologist was being distracted by his smartwatch for the email notifications that he was getting. So the entire time in this consultation, he was distracted and looking and pressing a button and checking what it was that was distracting him. In this time where he was supposed to be fully attentive to somebody that was in an unwell state, etc. And I thought how easy it is to see someone that works in this industry, how distracted he was.
Oh my
And
God.
how it was really, it was because I can't unsee. I think this is such a, I find this so fascinating, the psyche and what drives us and what's underneath everything, that I'm very observant of these things. And it didn't irritate me, but I noticed it and I was like, gosh, this is a classic example of someone that's supposedly here, being fully attentive to my needs, and yet there he is just constantly looking.
Oh
it
my
was it,
God.
it's fascinating, but it does show where we're at. And these are really trying times. And I know we've talked about this before, but I mean, think about how this is for the image. These are adult brains that are struggling with this world. Imagine what it's doing to our children that haven't yet developed the adult final brain architecture, and there is on warp speed stress,
Well,
warp
we're gonna have
speed, all of
that conversation on another day.
wow.
We're gonna talk just about that. We are gonna end it here for today because I do have somebody waiting in the waiting room. And I love having these conversations with Nikki because she gets my brain moving, and we're not alone. So if we feel annoyed by self-care, like she was saying, like if those are hitting chords in us, those are things that we need to look at. You know, if things are annoying me in the day, I need to look at why that's annoying me. This, I'm not pointing any fingers here. I'm just as guilty as everybody else. And I need to learn to slow down too, just like everybody else does, and hone in on what's going on with me so that I can stay healthy as well. Right. So I want to thank you for joining Miss Nikki Cooper and myself today, and we will see you next time on Echoes of Destiny. Have a good night.